Hello and welcome to another flying video with Flight Level 180. Today we're in the Bonanza again, but the star of the show is not going to be the airplane. The star of the show today is the iPad, and I'm going to go ahead and bring it up on the screen here. It's going to cover a lot of the instruments, but we're not really going to worry about the instruments too much. We're going to be focusing on how to use the iPad in a VFR flight. So I chose a pretty complicated environment, and we're in the desert Southwest again in the Phoenix area. We're actually at Glendale Airport, and I chose this airport because there's a massive amount of airspace complexity here, plus some terrain that we need to worry about, and it really explains to you some of the things that Foreflight can do. So let's dig right into it. So Foreflight is an electronic flight bag. It's something that, you know, the majority of VFR pilots and a lot of IFR pilots are using these days. And it's an incredible tool for helping with navigation and situational awareness and helping you with safety. And I'm going to go over, this is an incredibly rich tool. I can't go over everything, but I'm going to go over some of the key things and give you a little tour of how it works. Cost is $100 a year for a subscription to this, and plus you have to have an iPad. So let's go ahead and look at things here. So if you look at the Phoenix area, you can see Phoenix right there in the middle, and you see a lot of blue lines, and that's mostly Class Bravo airspace. So if you look at the hourglass here in the middle, I'm just going to click and hold, and you can see where that little triangle is on the side is where I clicked. That's surface to 9,000 feet Class Bravo. So you can't go in there as a pilot without having positive control from ATC. And as you get farther from the airport, the altitudes change. So if you look here, like we're here, this little blue dot, and I'm going to click next to that, and you can see the Bravo is from 4,000 and 9,000 feet. So the altitudes start going up from the ground, so you get some space from the ground where you can fly without talking to ATC. So our goal today is to get out of the airspace without having to violate the Bravo, and I'm going to show you some more airspace. Now where we're going, if you take the easiest way to just select a waypoint you're going to, is you just go ahead and we're going to go to E25, which is Wickenburg, which is a little bit north and west of the city of Phoenix, and we're going to go ahead and click that, and you notice it adds it to my flight pan, and I'm just going to go direct to. So you can just punch in things, whatever you want on here, KORD, and hit enter, and it just adds it right to the flight plan. So you can add IFR waypoints and such forth. It's very easy. So let's just go ahead and get rid of that. I'll just drag it off the screen, and that's the FPL button up here in the top. Now, okay, so the next thing you see here is you see this big pink block, and Glendale is a super unique airport in that it abuts, I mean, like the end of the runway almost touches restricted airspace. And this is for Luke Air Force Base. So you see that right there in the middle, that's Glendale's to the right and Luke's to the middle. It's very, very close to the Glendale Airport. And all this airspace is restricted. You can actually fly in it sometimes, but we're going to assume that the airspace is active and figure out what we would do. So if we're flying to E25, there's no way you're going to take a direct route, like right through the airspace and right at the arrival or departure end of the runway. You're going to have a head-on with some F-35s. So you don't want to do that. So let's figure out how we're going to do this. So you can go to the south and go around this way, or you can go to the north. We're going to go to the north. So what you can do is you grab this little line here. You just click and drag, and then drop it there, and you say, okay, I'm going to choose that location. Then you grab the next piece, and you drag it there, and you click there. So let's check to see how that looks. So this airspace here is surface to 4,000. So when we're climbing up, we can't go in that area. This airspace over here is Phoenix Deer Valley, which is the busiest municipal airport in the world. Well, at least in the U.S. and probably in the world. And that's surface to 4,000 feet, 3,999. So we want to stay out of that. But there's this little gap here where we can go. So if you click here in the middle, the only airspace is class Bravo, which is 6,000 to 9,000, and we're not going to go above 6,000. Now, if you look here, there's another block. So this is 3,000 to 4,000. So we need to be above 4,000 when we get there. And then let's look here. So this is 3,000 to 6,000. So we need to stay out of this airspace here, but we can be in this airspace here if we're above 4,000. So let's take and drag right up there. Okay, that will keep us out of that airspace, and there's nothing up here. Oops, let's bring that up again. And let's click up here. There's nothing there. There's no restricted airspace up there, so we're good. And then if we look over here, surface 500 to 6,500 feet. That's a problem. So we cannot fly over there. So let's take, and we're just going to drag this guy right up there, right to the corner. And there we go. So now we have a route where we can pretty much safely stay away from traffic. So we need to stay below 4,000 until we cross that blue line in the middle. Then when we hit this waypoint, we're going to climb above 4,000. And once we get into here, we need to be above 4,000. So you need to be vigilant here. You might be getting a phone call to or from the FAA. So that's pretty much it. So let's go ahead and get popping. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the flying stuff. If you're interested in how and why I fly the Bonanza a certain way, I recommend you check out my other videos. I'll leave some links at the end. So let's go ahead and check everything. Clock, axis, lights, axis controls, instruments, free and correct, gas, trims, and flaps. Everything is looking good. Okay. It's funny, when the other airplanes pull up next to me on the runway, my frame rate goes to hell in a handbasket. But so here we go. RPM, fuel flow, manifold pressure, oil pressure, all looks good. EGT is starting to come up. Everything looks good. Airspeed's alive. There's 60 knots. We're going to rotate at 77 knots. And there we go. Getting some really crappy frame rates here, but we're just going to not worry about that. Okay. That should clear itself up as we get up in the air. Okay. Gear coming up. Gears up and locked. Okay. Now if you look on the map here, you can see that we're already getting close to that airspace. So we need to start our right turn a little bit early before we start blowing into that. It's called a SATR, a Special Air Traffic Rules, which is something special they have set up around the Luke airspace. Okay, and so we have now this route is nothing we can take and plug into our GPS navigator on. It's a VFR map where we have to fly it manually. We either set the the heading bug, or we can just hand fly it. So I'm going to go ahead and hand fly things here, and I think that's going to make things a lot easier, so I can talk and jump around on the screen. I'm sorry, I'm going to set things up for the autopilot to fly things. So let's go ahead and get our heading bug over to right about there. And let's go ahead and click heading. And now we have our altitude engaged. Everything's looking good. Okay, so you can see on the map, on the Foreflight page, you can see some interesting things here. So obviously you can see our airplane. You can see a blue line which shows the vector we're flying on, which is very helpful. And as we turn, you'll notice that will curve to show which way we're turning. And you can see the aqua colored circle. And what that is that's our glide radius. So if you look in the bottom right down there, it says glide is 105 knots of indicated airspeed, and the glide ratio is 10.6 to 1. So that's something you can go and configure for whatever airplane you're flying. And basically the Foreflight app will calculate based on the wind and the terrain and your altitude. It'll figure out where you can actually glide to. So, you know, right now, if we were to lose an engine, we're not making it back to Glendale. So anyway, so that's interesting stuff. So, you know, and when you're a VFR pilot, you're typically just, you know, you throw your flight plan into Foreflight, and you know it's not a precise thing. You don't need to be precisely on the line. You can wander a little bit, but it gives you general guidance, and it's a really useful tool in the cockpit where you don't need to do dead reckoning or, you know, use paper charts. You can actually just take and look at the iPad on your lap or on a yoke amounts, and you're in good shape. So it looks like we need to increase our rate of climb a little bit here. We're not going to sit. Now you notice that blue line is 4,000 feet. We have to be below 4,000 feet when we cross that line. Then we need to get up to 4,500 pretty quickly once we get above that. So let's go ahead and increase our rate of climb quite a bit. And that should, I don't think there's any chance we're going to hit 4,000 by the time we hit that blue line. There's no chance. And that should get us above so this area right here is 3,000 to 4,000. So we need to be above 4,000 by the time we cross in this area. Now we have some flexibility here. We can just keep going north. Like this area here is 7,000 to 9,000, so we don't need to worry about it. So we could just keep flying up here and then turn left if we didn't have enough altitude. So, you know, we're totally flexible here to do some things to stay out of the problematic airspace. So let's see. I'm trying to shift my heading a little bit left. Okay, so let's go ahead and flip through some of the things the Foreflight can do for you. So I'm going to start in the top left and just go around the screen. So what we have here is we have the VFR sectional map. You can turn that off and get a nice clean picture. So all it shows you is the airspace and a few obstacles and some terrain. So nice view. Typically I would switch in a VFR flight. I'm switching between this and that. In the clean view. Now you can also do an IFR chart, and that's really something we don't care about given that we're flying VFR. But if you're flying IFR, it's very helpful to have the airways. So I'm just going to go ahead and turn off the map, and let's go through the rest of the stuff. Now you can also see some weather on here, which is incredibly useful when you're dodging clouds and such forth. So you can see up here, if you look over the Great Lakes, you know, there's a big snowstorm. And it really helps you a lot to be able to see that. There's no weather where we are right now. So you can click on the far right corner, this little target icon is how you center in on where you are. And then there's various views. There's satellite to show cloud cover. There's color IR satellite. Now I'm going to turn on traffic, and this is very useful. And I don't understand why they would even have this turned off ever on Foreflight. So I'm going to go ahead and go to, it says our course to next is 353, so let's go ahead and set that up. If you look there, so you can see those other airplanes that just took off behind us. And this one underneath us at +8, that's 700 feet above us, and you can see the vector of where it's going, and its speed is 170 knots. So it's not really a concern. When they get close, it will turn a yellow color, and you'll see and it'll actually start giving you audible and visual warnings on the screen when it's getting close to you. So, and this is exactly what you see in a cockpit when you have ADS-B and Foreflight sitting on your lap in a cockpit. This is exactly what you see. You can see the traffic, and you can get those advisories. It's amazing how close Foreflight for X-plane is. It's pretty much indistinguishable from what you actually see in the cockpit. It's really amazing, and the integration is fantastic. So well done, X-plane guys, and Foreflight, if you see this. So you can see as we're climbing up, our ring is getting bigger. So as we're higher above the ground, we have a bigger glide distance, and you can see the little squiggly parts. That's where there's terrain. You can see it off there to the right, where we wouldn't be able to glide past that because it would get in the way. Pretty impressive. So there's all sorts of other information you can pull up here. One thing I like to do is you can show visibility. So there's 10 nautical mile visibility at Deer Valley. So obviously clear day. You can also pull up ceiling. And something I like to do with ceiling is I like to go on the map and look around and say, okay, where are some airports I can practice between? So these two would be great. It's got a 700 and 800 foot ceiling, and maybe KCMA is even lower. It's 400 feet. So you can fly between one of these two airports and practice IFR and RNAV and VOR approaches. It's a great tool to be able to do that. So let's jump back over to where we are. And our altitude is, we just crossed over 4,000 feet. So we have no worries when it comes to violating any airspace if we fly our course. So all good there. So pretty easy to dodge, even though it's really complicated airspace. If you spend a little time thinking and looking at what you've got there, you can figure out a reasonable way to fly the course. So I'm going to bring my RPM back a little bit. Okay, let's continue on. So you saw everything there. Now, one last thing that's really cool is you can actually pull up the fuel prices in the area. And you can see there that it's got all the fuel prices loaded. So Scottsdale Airport is $5.68 a gallon. Phoenix is $6.19. Obviously, there aren't encouraging GA flights. And where we're going is green, so that's a cheaper airport. And Goodyear is $4.60. So you can kind of plan out your flight around the country based on the price of the various of gas at the various locations. So this is pretty cool. I'm going to go back to ceiling. And so let's go to flight plan. So I already showed you that. I've got my coordinates laid in there, and it just basically put those in. There is a way, if you have the correct avionics in your airplane, to be able to send the coordinates to, or whatever flight plan you have that you set up in your iPad, and send it directly to the Garmin or whatever navigation system you have, which is really cool. I think they're about $1,000. I can't remember the particular piece of equipment that does it, but it's a really nice feature. So you can see over there on the left, I have November 232 Golf Mike, which is, I have a profile set up for this particular airplane. So I went in and programmed, glide ratio, speeds I'm using in descent, fuel consumption, etc. And that allows me to, let's go ahead and start heading to the left here a little bit. So I went and set up everything I needed for this airplane. So it's able to calculate, like if you look down here at the bottom of the flight plan, it says distance to destination, ET is 17 minutes. So it's in fuel usage is 5.5 gallons. Well, it knows based on the information that I've inputted that what the airplane is going to do performance-wise. And you've got your tailwind in there, it's calculating that. There's a lot of other things. I'm not going to go through all of them. There is this little suitcase here, which is important. When you're flying a real-world flight on the ground, when you have internet coverage, you go and you, quote, pack up all the information you need, the NOTAMs and weather and other information you need. So you're actually prepared when you get in the airplane. You have everything saved in there. It's a nice little feature. Now, one super important thing here, and I'm not going to show you the rest of this, but procedure. So if you're on an IFR flight plan flying into an airport with RNAV or localizer approaches or ILS approaches, you would see those listed here, and it would tell you what the which one has the best wind and make recommendations to you. Now, in this particular airport, there's no RNAV or VNAV or anything like that. There's no RNAV or ILS approaches, so we're just going to use a standard traffic pattern. So I'm going to fly to runway 23, and it tells you it's right traffic. So that's a nice thing. It just tells you right there that it's right traffic for this runway. So we could do a 45. Well, that doesn't look like the smartest way to fly the pattern. Or you could do a cross midfield tearbot drop, which would be acceptable. Or you could do a cross midfield direct. Well, for the sake of expediency, I'm going to do a cross midfield direct. So you just hit add to route, and you hit close, and then you look on your map here, and now you've got over here, you've got your nice pattern. It's an incredibly useful tool when you're first learning how to fly patterns. I'm throttling back here quite a bit to try to get my try to get our speed down, because we're gonna run out of time if I go too fast. But so we're already 158 knots, coming back, it looks like, nicely. So super useful. I mean, if you have trouble visualizing how to fly a perfect pattern, and you know, if I'm doing a cross midfield direct with a blah blah, it tells you, it shows you exactly what to do, and it makes it very, very simple. So I strongly recommend to those of you that are trying to learn how to do these things, picking up Foreflight. Now let's go ahead and look at the rest of these things. So you can actually go and turn on the change some of your view settings here. So if I want to change my track up to centered or track up forward, I can do that. You know, or you can do north up. I'm kind of a north up guy, but whatever is your preference. Lots of different settings there. You can see it's connected through X-Plane at the bottom there. Now, the next thing I'm going to show you is maybe makes every penny you pay on Foreflight valuable if you're flying in a real airplane. If you lose your vacuum system, and I actually had a vacuum system failure the other day in Foreflight, you actually can just go ahead and pull this up, and this gives you your horizontal situation. It gives you your GPS airspeed, it gives you your GPS altitude, and it gives you your bearing and your relative location relative to the course. Now if you look here, I'm just going to slide over to the left. Now you can see there's a little bit of latency on what what Foreflight is doing, but that's pretty much just dead on of what you see in a real airplane when you actually deviate and you have the screen up. So, you know, if you get in big trouble, you lose your vacuum system, you know, just go ahead and pop this puppy up, and you have a backup instrument cluster that is, you know, cheap to operate, and you know, it's just it's really an amazing safety feature. So 293 is our next course. You can see I'm reading that at the bottom of the screen. It gives you your course to next and such forth. Let's turn this off because we don't need it right now. Now, one last thing on the top bar over here on the right, this white box, you can go ahead and type in anything you want. So let's see, Chicago. And then, you know, there it is. You see all the different airports and weather and such forth that has the word Chicago in it. So it's super useful shortcut. Left side allows you to turn things on and off from the screens. You can turn on and off airports. Now, one thing that's very useful is this pen tool, and I'll show you how that works. If we go to the airports tab in the bottom left, I see that my pattern altitude, so I'm at Glendale, let's switch to Wickenburg. Pattern altitude is 3379. So go back to the map, and I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to turn on my pen, and I'm going to write 3379. So now I've got a little reminder there that, you know, when I get to the airport, I can just look there and boom, I've got a note for myself. And most pages in Foreflight, you can actually write on the page. You can write on the charts. You can write on everything. It's really nice. The recording button is to record your flight, so you can play things back. This little three-dotted guy down here near the bottom of the vertical column allows you to see your entire flight plan. Really nice. The plus and minus obviously zoom in. Very handy. Now, look at the bottom row here. Not the bottom, but one above the bottom. So this gives you your status. It tells you your course to your next. It gives you your current track. So I'm 3 degrees off track, so I'll go ahead and slide that over. Gives you your estimated time to the destination, and that's based on your airspeed and what your airplane does in descent and such forth. Gives you your GPS ground speed, GPS altitude, and your track. Really nice. Now, this is a customizable screen. So if you say, you know, I don't care about my ETA destination. Instead, I want, you know, horizon distance or whatever. There's a lot of different choices of things you can add there. So you can go and customize that. And I've actually customized a little bit away to something that I prefer when I'm in an airplane. So the first thing is this from P48. So this is the distance to the nearest airport. So I know I'm 5.2 nautical miles northwest. So if I look to the southeast, so let's go down southeast, there it is. There's this really east-southeast, but there's P48. So it gives you a sense of where the nearest airport is if you get in trouble. Now, I'm not going to make it there based on the glide rings, but you know, if I were higher and I could quickly, immediately, if I had any sort of issue, know exactly where that airport is. Now, the other thing that I've added is this descent to destination on the far right. So it's basically looking at my course, what I'm going to do in the pattern, and saying, okay, if you descend at 170 feet per minute, you're going to arrive at the airport at the exact right time, which is a really, really nice feature. You can actually do that on the GPS. You can do it in your head, but this I find is the easiest way to do it. Now, there's actually a moving map here. You can actually, just like on any weather website, you can have the map in motion. I'm not going to bother with that. Now, let's look at the bottom row. And the airports tab is probably the most important. So you save a list of your most recent airports, and you can just jump right around. Now, the first thing you see is this little map. So you can pull up a map of the airport. So when you're preparing to land somewhere, you can go and study it before you land. Very nice feature. It gives you your pattern altitude. You can actually, this little arrow tells you if you're flying other things, like if you're a heavy aircraft, you could actually use that altitude in the Bonanza since we're so fast. But anyway, this just gives you that information. It tells you the kind of fuel, tells you the procedures. There's no procedures here. Tells you the weather radar, which is 121.375. Tells you your Unicom frequency, your CTAF. It's really nice. And on this page, on the frequency pages, it tells you a lot more detail. And the weather, it tells you, nearby, this one doesn't report any weather, but most airports do, and you can get the latest weather. You can get the terminal area forecasts, forecast discussion. There's a lot of great information here. Runways, it actually tells you, it's right traffic on runway 23. Now you can see that pop up, and it's giving me an oral warning saying that what the destination is. So it tells you it's 230. Well, let's go ahead and set our course to 230. So we have that little visual cue when we get into the pattern of where the runway is. So that's a nice little handy trick. And so procedures. So there's not really much to see. You can just see the airport diagram here. But if you go to Glendale and you go to procedures, well, it shows you the departure, the arrival, the approach. And look at this. So I can pull up the runway 19 procedure. So all the charts I need are loaded on the iPad in Foreflight, and I can just pull them up when I need them. And if I need to go in here and write or do whatever I want, I can do that. Incredibly good tool. Let's go to documents. So you can load all sorts of FA documents. Really handy. Let's check where we are on the map. We're looking good. So imagery is typically weather imagery. So you can go and pull up all sorts of weather imagery and do your flight planning based on, what things look like. Really nice. And it actually allows you to builds an entire briefing for you. When you enter your flight plan, it goes in and gives you a 20-page briefing showing you weather charts and airport information and all sorts of stuff. It's really cool. Now, I find this most useful, this page, flights, where you build a flight plan on your laptop or your desktop, and then you go and you send it to the iPad, and it actually transfers to your iPad account on Foreflight, and you can actually go and load it up. So it's a nice option to do. Now, as you look out the window, you can see that I've got some terrain around me. So one thing you want to do is you can go to the sectional map, and you can zoom in and say, okay, I'm at 4,500 feet. Is there anything that gets up into that area? Well, this one's moderately close, but it's really not an issue. There's 3,000 feet. There's nothing that's going to be a problem from terrain altitude. So really nice trick there. Now, the $200 a year version is more advanced, and it shows you, it's hard to explain what it looks like, but it gives you a graphical view of the terrain and the airspace and everything you're flying through, and you can visually tell, okay, based on this flight plan, am I going to hit any terrain? Am I going to run through any military operation areas or any Bravo or anything like that? It's really, really handy. So if you're serious about flying and you're doing some more advanced VFR flying, it's not a bad idea to pick that one up. So let's keep rolling here. So the scratch pad is nice. So you can actually, if you're an instrument pilot and you're getting your clearance, you can get the craft there. Or if you're getting your ATIS, you can go in and say E25 and write everything you need to have there. Nice little form. Or you can just have a blank page where you write whatever you want on there. So really nice. Okay, and then the last thing and this is very rich, and I'm not going to go through all this stuff here, but this is one of the really nice things here is you can set up a checklist. So I'm in cruise, let's do my checklist. So my cowl flaps are closed, okay, and my power is set, and my mixture is set, and okay, and then you can it tells you it walks you through everything. So it's really, really nice. So anyway, it's really nice to have those checklists, and you can load up a bunch of different checklists for different airplanes, and it's all there. So okay, that's more or less it. That's what you need to know to really get most of what you can get out of Foreflight, either in a VFR flight. I'm not a flight instructor. This is not a flight instructor for real world flying, but I am telling you what you can do in X-plane. I strongly recommend it if you're serious about becoming a real world pilot, and you want to learn some of the fundamentals of what you can do in the cockpit and be comfortable with it and be ready to go. It's a great tool. It's an incredibly rich tool. I have friends that have taught me things, and I've taught them things, and these are guys with thousands of hours that have been using Foreflight for years. Oh, I didn't know you could do that. It's pretty cool. So anyway, let's go ahead and start getting set up here. I'm going to check the let's see. So Wickenburg has no wind. Altimeter is 3022. So let's go ahead and set that up. Okay. And let's go ahead and keep things going here. Okay, so I just brought the speed up a bit. Increase the power by going a little bit richer. That's pretty good. 58 degrees lean a peak. This is for those of you that haven't seen my other videos, this is the Rep Bonanza, and it's really cool in a lot of ways. It does have it teaches you how to fly lean a peak and rich a peak and how to stay out of the red box. There are some things that are very weak. It won't allow you to fly over square. There's some things that are really poorly thought out, but I would say 90% of it is excellent, and it's probably the best for training how to fly a fuel-injected complex airplane like the Bonanza. It's a really great tool. So, okay, so our pattern altitude is 3379. We are currently at 4,500 feet, so we need to go down 1,200 feet, and I'd like to be down a little bit early. So as soon as we make our turn here, we're going to go ahead and start descending, and I'm going to go ahead and start things manually. Let's see. I think that's it. You can see there's a lot of information on these sectional charts. The colors tell you the elevation of the ground. It's a really nice feature. It talks to you about the SATR here. Pilots are required to establish two-way communication with the Luke approach prior to entering the SATR. Typically they will allow you to fly through it depending on what sort of activity they have going on. But I sometimes I think it's just better and safer just to stay clear of it unless Luke is completely closed. So, and it's interesting. It's a big training base for the F-35. So I would bet the majority of training is going on at Luke Air Force Base for the F-35 pilots. Okay, so our course to next is 244. And I'm going to go a little left of that to give us a little bit more room. I'm going to go ahead and kill the autopilot. And I hope that was instructional, and you're going to see some of the advantages here as we get closer. I've got some really pretty bad latency on things. I think for some reason having the iPad screen up at the same time as we're flying, it just really kills the performance and makes me suspicious that somebody's data mining or something. So, or crypto mining or something like that. So I should check that out. But this is one of the few apps I could find that actually gives you a nice a nice view of the iPad while I'm flying. So you can see off there to the right, I'm not sure if you can see it, probably, maybe you can see it. Right there is my airport, so that's where we're headed. And you can see visually on the map, you know, it's a great tool to be able to visualize exactly where you are. I mean, it's almost so close to a no-brainer to have an electronic flight bag that, you know, it's pretty much something you just gotta have. I mean, if you don't have something like this in your cockpit, you're really shortchanging yourself. So okay, so 4,200 feet. We're looking for 3379, so we have about 800 feet to go. Now, what I'm going to do here is I have a little trick that makes things a lot easier. If you go straight midfield, so if you look at the map here, they have us going straight midfield, and that's sort of the traditional way to fly the pattern. But I find it's a lot easier if we take and we go out to the far end of the runway, so that far southwest end of the runway, and cross over the numbers there. So we actually have more time, because by the time you make the turn from the midfield to your downwind, you're basically already dropping your gear. So I like to be settled in a little bit and have a chance to slow down. So Wickenburg traffic, Bonanza, Orange Bonanza, 2 Golf Mike is, let's see, 3 nautical miles from the field. We'll make a cross midfield, 45-degree entry to the downwind for 23 Wickenburg. So we'll try to practice some of our callouts here. So we are 3,700 feet. Pattern altitude is 3379, so let's just call it 3,400. So we have 300 feet to go. Airspeed is high, but as we start to level out, we should be in much better shape there. And you can see we're actually now just able to glide to the runway if we needed to. So it gives you a pretty good sense, and that glide ring will really shrink as we come down. So gas is fine. We have our landing lights on. We have our cowl flaps closed. Let's see, gas, undercarriage. So mixture is lean. RPM is 2,200. Map is 19 inches, which is pretty much where I like to be. We're looking pretty good here. I'm going to start heading a little bit to the left. We're pretty close to pattern altitude, so let's stop descending right there. So I'm going to be a little high as I cross the airport, and then I'll drop down the last little bit. Okay. There's our field. We're definitely getting some lag here with the iPad going, but can't be helped. And you notice the little green line behind us, that's called breadcrumbs. Very, very helpful. And you know, you can see everything where we've flown, and you can go back and look, okay, how do we do against our course? Okay, so let's go ahead and start our cross midfield here. Okay, airspeed is 120 knots indicated. That's pretty good, and there are the numbers. That is perfect. So let's go ahead and straighten out right there and start dropping our nose down. So we're looking for 3,400 is pretty much the pattern altitude. Bring our power back a little bit so we don't blow too fast into it. Okay, you can see we're almost perfectly over the field. You know, this is exactly what you see in the real airplane. You can see all the other airplanes in the pattern. Now, something to keep in mind is ADS-B is only required. If you look there, see that big pink ring around the Phoenix area? That's a 30 nautical mile ring around Phoenix, around the Phoenix airport. And there we go. And so anywhere inside that ring, you legally need to have ADS-B out. So in theory, we can see every airplane that's within that ring, within that 30 nautical mile ring. Now, the reality is you need to check and keep your head on a swivel and make sure you're not missing something. But you know, you pretty much take it to the bank, more or less, that every airplane is going to be on it. Okay, so we're straightening out nicely for our pattern. And there we go. We're at pattern altitude, slightly high, but not bad. Okay, so we see by giving us a little bit of extra room, you know, we can get settled in and get ready for the next stage of the pattern. Now, out here, we're outside that ring, so you are not required to have ADS-B if you're out here. Gear coming down. Cow flaps are closed. That's what we want. Outside that ring, you really don't need to have ADS-B, so you need to keep your eyes open. There could be airplanes, you know, most have ADS-B in this area, but you know, some don't. You know, I flew very close to a glider the other day that you know, was zooming around like right in my flight path, and you know, you just got to keep your eyes open for that stuff. You can't trust that everybody's going to have it, but it is an incredibly useful tool. Now you can see I'm keeping a little tighter pattern than Foreflight wants me to do, but you know, I really like to stay close to the airport so I can potentially glide there if I lose an engine. So you know, a lot of safe flying is just making sure you're always you know, thinking of the options when you actually get so if you do lose an engine, that you or get in trouble, that you actually can make it to a safe place to land. So okay, flaps are down, airspeed is good. Let's go ahead and start our final. Wickenburg traffic, orange Bonanza, 2 Golf Mike, turning final, runway 23 for a full stop landing, Wickenburg. I should have been making other calls, but I was too busy talking to you. So you can see I'm coming in pretty high here, but that's okay, that's what I like. So gas is good, undercarriage is down and locked, mixture is lean, prop is 2200, flaps are 1 and locked, and switches are good. And you can see it's telling me I'm in short final now. It's a little difficult when you've got such latency. It's like this, it's a little jumpy here. Okay, so speed is high, so I'm going to go ahead and just start really bringing it down. So, but we're looking pretty good here. And there we are. We made it safely with the help of Foreflight. Now, for those of you that have problems getting this airplane to stop, it's incredibly sensitive to having the flaps down. So it's really not a great habit to be lifting the flaps every time you land, but in X-plane, if you're having trouble stopping your airplane, especially this Bonanza, you want to lift the flaps, and that actually makes it's much more extreme effect than what you have in the real world airplane. So notice here that as soon as we get below about 40 knots on the ground, it brings up the airport chart, which is a really, really nice feature of Foreflight. Really, really classy. So that's pretty much it. Airplane is drifting a little bit here. So that's it. So I hope you found that helpful. I hope that gives you something to work on if you're interested in buying Foreflight or have it and want to start using it more. If you're interested in an instrument version of this, I can do that as well. I've been thinking about doing that. It's a little bit not quite as smooth because of that, you know, you have to punch things into Foreflight, then you have to punch it into the panel. If you have the communication, that device that allows you to communicate the information between Foreflight and your panel devices, that would be better. But you know, Foreflight is great for IFR as well. So anyway, thank you very much for watching, and I hope that was helpful, and I'll see you in the next video.